In our last episode, we played with FreeDOS on this old puppy. Seriously, old school. But now it's time to get radical. ReactOS is an attempt to make a free and open source equivalent to Windows. It seeks to emulate either Windows 2000 or XP. I've played with earlier versions before, and I think it's time to have some fun with version 0.4.12. Download the ISO and burn it to a CD. Yes, it fits on a CD. The following is a compilation of several fresh installs. ReactOS is still alpha software, and hard crashes and blue screens are just a fact of life. Since I don't have a proper capture device, I had to use my cell phone camera. Please excuse the noise and distortion. Set your computer to boot from a CD drive and insert the disk. Let the computer boot into the CD. Select your language. Press Enter to install. Just make sure that this is a computer whose hard drive you don't mind blowing away. Here's where I pause to make a change from the default. The default is 640 by 480 screen resolution. I selected what was closest to the maximum limit that my monitor could handle. This gave me more screen space if I wanted it. When installing ReactOS, I always format the hard drive. And in this trial, I reinstalled ReactOS several times. If the folks at ReactOS are trying to emulate Windows by having the operating system bork itself, they're doing a really good job. Select the path for the OS. I went for the default. I suppose having custom destinations would be handy for multi-boot machines and developers, but I'm just a user. And now you let the copying begin. For the bootloader, I went with the default. Again, for multi-boot situations, changing this might be handy. After all the files have been copied to the hard drive, it's time for the first reboot. We have our first boot into the operating system. So far, so good, and it hasn't taken long at all. Now the operating system is discovering and installing what hardware drivers it can find. ReactOS only handles some of the basics, just enough to get it running. Now for a little personalization. Input your name and stuff, just like regular Windows. Ooh, themes, pretty. I'm boring, so I went with the defaults. Just like Windows, select workgroup or a domain. We're not going anywhere just yet, because the network drivers aren't installed. Trust me on this. Now the OS tries to install all the drivers it couldn't handle natively, and there are a lot of them. So it won't find a lot of these. If you have the drivers on CD or even floppy disk, you can try to install them now, but don't get your hopes up. We've made it to the desktop. Let's check out the control panel and go to the Device Manager. Yeah, we can see a lot of things need drivers, but at least ReactOS sees some of the hardware. I've got CDs with the drivers from both the gateway site and the motherboard site. I'll just copy the folders from the CD into the C drive to make things a little easier and faster. Instead of using the executable in the Ethernet driver folder, I'm installing directly from the Device Manager. I find that using the install executable can bork the system, and just going right to the driver itself works a lot better. Now that we can connect to the internet, we can download stuff from their little collection of programs. Some of the links don't work, and it's best to download the programs one at a time. Otter Browser wouldn't download properly, so I gave up on that one. Let's check out Firefox. Firefox sort of works. Here's a shot of my YouTube channel. Not very pretty. The video driver is pretty basic, so don't expect much. The audio doesn't work out of the box either. Firefox offered an update, and like a fool I tried it. This locked up the system, and I needed to reboot. After a hard reboot, the system found some disk errors which it corrected. Any attempt to use Firefox after that caused the system to lock up. Hoping for something a little snappier and less crashy than Firefox, I installed the Kmelon browser. It is faster, but it's ugly as sin. We'll try installing some audio drivers. Even after installation, there was still no sound. Hey! Games! I'll check out the Diablo 2 trial. I was able to get it to open, but the graphics were terrible. I plugged in a USB stick to see if the ports work, but nothing happened. I hear the next version they're closer to having the USB working. That will make a big difference. At this point, the machine slowed to a crawl, and it was time to do another clean install. After another install, I decided to risk using the installer from the VIAA website and install all the motherboard drivers. And I'm not messing around. Let's install them all! Sigh. Well, this was a giant fail. It was my own fault, using the executable instead of using the device manager. It's possible that some of the drivers were incorrect. Good thing it doesn't take long to reinstall the operating system. After another clean install, let's try another VIAA executable. Let's see what we can get working. We got the welcome screen. Well, something didn't go right with the Ethernet driver. Doing a little digging afterwards, it was for a completely different Ethernet chip. Maybe I should stick with the gateway drivers. Let's try the audio install. The gateway is supposed to be a media computer, so maybe with the right drivers we can get the audio to work. Maybe. Maybe. The application did load, but still no sound. The system slowed to a crawl at this point, and I decided to do a clean install. After the clean install of the OS, I decided to try the NVIDIA driver from the NVIDIA website. I had to dig a little to find it because the FX 5200 is a pretty old card. The installer would install both the driver and the, quote, NVIDIA experience. Sounds risky. Let's try it. Hey, it did install. Needs a reboot, so cross your fingers. Well, shoot. This is no good. Time for another clean install. After the install, it locked up copying files from the CD. It blue-screened at reboot with a disk error. I ran check disk from a utilities CD and the disk was clean. At this point, I'd had enough fun. If the folks at ReactOS wanted to replicate the Windows experience with crashes, blue screens, and a lack of drivers, they're doing a really good job. But seriously, I have to give them thumbs up for poking Microsoft. If you're a programmer up for a challenge, lend these guys a hand. With people yearning for the days of Windows XP, there could be a market for this puppy. The base system seems to be okay. It's the drivers that's the problem. If people working on ReactOS keep cranking out new versions, I'll keep testing them on real hardware. I'm looking forward to their next release. There's one more to go on the Gateway saga. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious.